What I'd like to do for you today is I'd like to give you an inside view of how we build the retirement tax planning roadmap and also just a general financial plan for somebody who comes to us at Revolutionary Wealth. The one thing I do want to lead in this conversation today is this is one, a demo, so these aren't real people. I didn't take people's financial information. I'm not sharing it publicly on the web. What I'm doing is I'm pulling ages, asset amounts, and different demographics that come together that make this very representative of somebody that we would be sitting down with that benefits most from the work that we do. There's no guaranteed results. I'm not promising anything here. It's subject to your situation, your goals, your objectives, the challenges you face. And so there's nothing guaranteed. I'm not making any promises in this. This is just simply a case study, an example based around some of the variables that we commonly see when somebody comes to us. So I want to lead with saying that today. The other thing I want to also give an insight in on is just what are the variables that we look into before I start sharing this. And the key variables that we look at is one, obviously, is there an opportunity to save money on taxes and retirement, and how do we go about doing that? But the other thing, if somebody is willing, if they'll share statements and they'll share account balances and things of that nature with us, is we're also going to do an audit on, okay, where are their assets located? What is the asset location and how are those investments invested in? What is the risk tolerance associated with that? And is there an opportunity to take less risk over time and get the same long-term targeted return? There's so many people that want to be day traders. They want short-term results. And that is not revolutionary wealth. That is not what we aim for. We look on time horizons, and that's another video I'm going to make, is just how do you set time horizons on your money? If you look at a lot of these buckets, they're meant to be long-term buckets, and we need short-term dollars for short-term things. But for our long-term dollars, we need to have a targeted long-term return approach. And what is our expectation of how we want this money to perform? But what is the given risk that we're taking to achieve that result at the same time? I lead with saying that. I'm going to share my screen to give you an inside look. What you are currently looking at is our financial planning software, which clients actually can get access to if they're working with us. And so what you see is we got our sample client, John and Mary Doe. The facts associated, you saw there you got a net worth of 2.3 million. John is 64, Mary is 63. Goal of retiring is for John at 65 and Mary the same year when she's 64. We do a life expectancy of 100 years old. This is the youth in me. If you meet with an older advisor, they're going to run you, on 85, 90, 95 tops. I do 100 because the current statistic is that for every year that you're alive, you're adding 30 days to your life expectancy for every year. So for every year, you're adding a month. And that number is actually increasing quite a bit. I don't want a situation that changes happen with technology and modern medicine and you outlive your money. When we go over to net worth, a little bit of breakdown. They have an emergency fund, 3 to 6 months of cash sitting around. They have a joint investment. So for the last 20, 30 years, they set some money aside every month in what we call a taxable brokerage account. So when you take the money out, you pay capital gains taxes, which is better than ordinary income 9 times out of 10. They've each got 401k and 403bs, which are what we call pre-tax dollars. So these are the dollars that right now are on the tax roller coaster. They're going to be forced to pay taxes on those dollars whether they want to or not at age 73. John's got almost 800,000. Mary has $345,000 currently in what we call pre-tax dollars. Those are dollars that you got a deduction on when you put the money in. It's tax deferred. And then when they take the money out, they're going to pay taxes on those dollars. And so the opportunity becomes is one, is there a way to pay those taxes today when we believe taxes are less before taxes presumably double in a few years? Or is there a way to just shift that money around whether taxes go up or not and they pay taxes today, get it off their grid of taxation for estate purposes, whatever it may be, also so they're not forced to pull money from these accounts for required minimum distributions at age 73 and beyond. They own their home, they own their cars. Their total net worth, all things included, is $2.3 million. Their social securities projected to be 39,000 for John, 17,000 for John. Mary has a pension income from the hospital pension. That's 12,000. And then expenses, they've got about 60,000 of expenses, and that's going to continue. And as they get older, the 60,000 a year is going to continue. Because that's the biggest thing I'm finding with clients that are nearing retirement, in retirement, well into retirement, is you reach a point you actually get some stuff paid off. And what people don't realize is we really want to plan on what do you need to live on? What are the basic needs and the things you want to be doing? Let's plan for that. And a lot of times the number isn't as crazy and audacious for most people as people would assume. From there, once we know everything, somebody sends us their statement, we know where the money's at, the different account types, the different tax types, the balances, the investments. We can go to work and doing an audit, not only on the taxes, what can be done from a tax perspective, but we can also do it from an investment perspective and how is the money invested. When it comes to tax planning and planning for taxes in retirement, there's a couple variables that matter the most. So the first thing is age. How old are you? You have to be 59 and a half to take money out without paying a penalty. The way around that is if you're 55 and some of these things relate to you, you just have to have the money setting aside to pay those taxes out of your own bank account because you can't pull the tax directly from the IRA or you have the penalty associated. But that being said, if you're 59 and a half, then we can just subtract the taxes out of the bank account so you never have to pay those taxes manually out of your own cash. It's a little less painful at the end of the day. So the sweet spot is okay, 59 and a half up until age 73. They keep adjusting this. So depending on when you're watching this video, it might get pushed to 75 or the window is 59 and a half to 73 years old. That is our runway from a tax perspective, where we can say that's a block of time that we can spread out taking money from what is pre-tax taxable in retirement and move that money over into what we call post-tax, or money that's you pay the tax up front and it's not taxed later and not subject to required minimum distributions. Once again, a required minimum distribution is the making you pull close to 4% of your pre-tax balance. They can tax you if you're not already pulling that amount of money from the account. Example being, what you'll see when I show the plan to you is for John and Mary, okay, he's going to be 65, she's 63, going to be 64. So they have a runway of 9 and 10 years each to shift some of these dollars where it's not, hey, let's pay taxes on $800,000. That would be a higher tax bill. The idea is we take enough money to fill up the tax bracket they're in so they're not taking an increased tax hit on those dollars and shift it from our left hand to our right hand and get it off the grid and hopefully save taxes. It doesn't always work that way. That's why I always tell people it's your situation, it's your circumstance. And so it doesn't always work that way. The example being, if you don't have a certain amount of money, which is the second variable, the amount of money you have, depending on how much money you have, either too much or too little or right in the sweet spot, you may or may not be able to save money on taxes, or it may or may not make sense. Because what we don't want to do is pay taxes today, and then you either die prematurely or it was never an issue to begin with. Your RMD was going to be less than what taxes you're paying today are. And so that is a variable based on the amount of money in the account. And so you have to be very clear on that. If you don't have enough money or you have too much money, it's got to be a sweet spot. We got to dial it in because we just don't want to pay any more money in taxes than we have to. Things correspond, how much money we have and how old we are. Another thing I would add too is life expectancy. I run these stage 100, but if you say my family, we have a history of passing away at 75, okay, this may or may not make sense. I'm not saying it doesn't make sense, but we have to be careful in that regard. The caveat I still put, people is if you have intentions to make sure your kids or grandkids, church, charity, whoever are set up well, the other caveat I have is get it off the grid of taxation because if it's in an IRA or a 401k and it's not in the tax-free bucket, the government is going to force them to spend that money over a 10-year period. So they pay taxes, and they're paying even more taxes, and they're still working or something. It's on top of their earned income. So then they're at an even higher tax rate. So even more of your money that you saved is getting burned on your kids. So that's where I would even say the life expectancy isn't as big of a variable because if you care about making sure that people are set up behind you, it still makes sense to get it set up on the tax-free side of things. Jumping into the plan, the first thing that I run when somebody sends me their statements is actually the portfolio analysis. This is an immediate thing where we can add value to people. We're not going to get into the in-depth of actual stocks, mutual funds, annuities, investment recommendations really need to be case by case and with each individual person. So we're keeping it high level and things that can just be merely educational for everybody today. But what you'll see is their portfolio on an average, they can expect long term to average about 6.86%. That is over a 30, 40-year period. Their investments should be averaging within that realm. You're probably looking at that saying, well, I've been getting 20%, I've been getting 30%. That leads to the risk and standard deviation. I have a finance degree, so it's easy for me to just act like this is general language, but it's not for the common person. The standard deviation is the amount of money up or down. It could go from the average depending on the amount of risk you're taking. And so what this tells us is the risk score is the average is 6%. They could see an increase of 13.54% up or down at any given time. So what you're maybe thinking of, oh, I've been getting over 20%, correct? The 6.86% plus 13.54, that's over 20%. We're pretty close. One thing, as we've been meeting with people lately, is I say, hey, do you feel like you've been closer to the top or the bottom of this risk score? And they say, man, I guess I've been at the top for a long time. And we just pause. And what I then say is, what goes up must come down. I'm not meaning to be doom and gloom, but we've been on a long stretch here where every single year it feels like up, 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 20%, 15%. 85% of the time, the market is up and to the right. And I preach that every day, all day. We can't get buying into the media headlines that the market's going to crash and we're all going to lose our money and nothing's ever going to recover. Because that's just not the truth and how things have historically worked. But the bottom line is we've been riding the top of the risk profile for a long time, over a decade. To that point, these clients could also see a negative 13%. So if I'm sitting down with John and Mary, I'm pulling out my calculator, are you okay with being down minus 6 or 7% at any given time? The answer could be yes, could be no, it could be, I don't know if I like that. Depending on the client, we then say, okay, one, are you okay with that period? If you're not, what strategies exist? And so then we go to say, is there an opportunity to get the similar return while taking less risk here to try to chip away at that heart associated with the risk? I'm going to speak to somebody today that's watching this who has an advisor. You have your own accounts you're managing, and you're subconsciously thinking, I think I want to get out of the market. If you're thinking that way today, you're taking too much risk. And there's an opportunity based on what I'm going to show you here to do something different. It's the answer is not typically, and sometimes it is to get out of the market. A lot of times it's based on how do we change our risk profile and where is our asset location on an asset allocation. The answer is then what can we do to reduce risk in a portfolio? I'm going to walk right over here to investment planning and investment proposal. I do not use this as an actual proposal. We have different proposal things we send to clients after we make a recommendation. This is actually just a proposal to run an analysis. They're still relatively young. We're going to shoot for a moderate portfolio. We're not going super conservative. We're not going aggressive. We're shooting for moderate. And then we're going to do risk versus return analysis. And so what the technology tells us is you're getting 6.86% today, taking 4% risk. A target portfolio with a moderate risk score would average a 6.19% rate of return, slightly less, but only a risk score of 9.28%. And so what the math means on this is once you subtract the loss of rate of return by taking less risk, and you combine that and you divide that by the difference in the risk scores, you're taking 23% less risk to get the same targeted average return. That is not assuming that you incorporate different product strategies that have a hedge that you either don't lose money or you're protected up to a certain percentage where you don't lose money. Those are things we incorporate in portfolios. It's just a matter of being diversified enough to reduce the risk or to get the same targeted average return, but take 23% less risk. A lot of times we win people over just by seeing this because they feel like they've never had a way out. It's take a lot of risk and have zero blueprint or understanding of how it works, period. And that's what you get. That has been their experience, either doing it themselves or working with a financial advisor. And that's just not the truth. Like there are things we can do to build into a portfolio. And once again, there's things that we can even do that enhance this that say, hey, we're going to carve off a certain amount of money with something that has a hedge or a protection against it, where we're still targeting the 6.9% return, but maybe the risk is even 5% or 6% because there's that hedge in place that protects you. This a lot of times wins people over, if I'm being very honest. This is just a way that they can have peace of mind, take less risk, and get the same targeted outcome. This is the first thing that we do for people, actually, is just to do an audit on where their money's invested to give them an idea. Is there a way to reduce risk and get the same targeted return over time? We're going to jump into the actual tax piece, which is why you're probably watching this today. The reason I show this first is I always love to show people what is your current situation. So we showed your current investments and the risk associated with that, but also what is like putting your situation in a financial plan. What is the probability of success to age 100? I'm sitting down with John and Mary, either do this themselves or they have another financial advisor. I'm going to tell them, congratulations, you are 100% on track to meet all of your financial goals. You're never going to run out of money. You're all set. You can tell me to kick rocks on reducing risk. You can ride that roller coaster. You're going to be fine. There's almost nothing that could happen that's going to throw you off course based on your standard of living, life expectancy, where your money's invested. Some of you watching this today, this confirms you're like, well, I feel like I'm okay. Like I feel like my standard of living's low. I don't feel like taxes are necessarily a problem today. I don't see it. I think I'm going to be fine, and I don't think I'm ever going to run out of money. That's a large percentage of people watching this today, and I'm just going to affirm you are correct in that regard. I have a mentor of mine. The thing he told me is he said, Drew, success hides inefficiency. And that has stuck with me to today that you get to a level of complacency where things are good and you just accept inefficiency. And what I find is when we meet with people that have advisors, or even they do it themselves, there's complacency to just pass on things and not inspect and improve. Another one of my favorite quotes, I played a year of college football, so football is something I relate to. Nick Saban, the legendary coach of Alabama, he's famous for saying that in practice, he would say, we don't do it until we get it right. We do it till we can't get it wrong. And when I'm sitting down with a client, I'm already assuming we're going to help them with the things that they have going already, which is managing their money properly, hopefully not running out of money, having a financial plan. That is a given to me. And if I'm being honest, I think of that as a commodity that anybody could go get from any other advisor across the street. So the thing I think about is what can we not get wrong? And what we can't get wrong is either taking too much risk and you take all your money out of the market and then you're shot long term, or you don't realize how much money you're paying in taxes or your kids are going to pay in taxes. Those are things that we can't get wrong. And so what you're going to see is both of these situations say that you're on track, but it's what is inside of them that matters. We're going to go to the current situation. Lifetime portfolio value. Right now it's 2.8 million. Life expectancy, it's going to go up quite a bit, 5 million or so. When we go to taxes, total taxes, what we see is that they're going to pass on 2.8 million family and those that they love, church, charity, whoever, but they'll have paid $1.4 million in taxes along the way. And notice those RMDs start kicking in that I talked about. 25% tax bracket. Now their effective tax bracket, 9%, 12%, 13, and it starts climbing the older you get because your investments are rapidly growing. You got this money machine spitting out money, and guess who's excited? The government. It worked. They told you to do the 401k. It worked. You're paying the bills. They get to go spend money freely, and you get to pay the bill. What it adds up to is that over time, you're going to get the sheer pleasure and duty of paying $1.4 million in taxes if you are Mary and John. So not ideal. And so then what we're going to do is we're going to go over to our advanced plan, go to lifetime portfolio value. What you see is it's already telling us that somewhere in these changes and recommendations, $315,000 has been gained above what they were going to have before. Go to taxes. Cumulative taxes. I'm not telling anybody you're not ever going to not pay taxes. The key is you got to pay some taxes. What you see is they're still paying almost $1 million in taxes. They're paying $959,000 in taxes over their lifetime. So it's not too good to be true. Nobody's getting off of this without paying taxes necessarily, but they're saving $500,000 in taxes over their lifetime. Where does the 315,000 come from? Think about it. if you pay taxes on dollars over a long-term period of time, that is money that cannot be invested in the market. And so that 315 is money that you didn't hand over to the government, that they did something you have no idea that they did it with. And your money stayed in your pocket and it continued to grow and compound. 315,000. That's not even counting. Think about it. You leave 3.1 million to somebody. What's the compounded effect of the savings there if it's in a tax-free environment? Think about the compounded growth. So that's just in your lifetime, the 315. And so what this tells us is that by strategically taking money from a pre-tax bucket to a tax-free bucket, whatever vehicle we drive in, we can strategically shift money and add $817,000, give or take, to somebody's portfolio. And when you think about that from a rate of return perspective, doing the math on that, 817,000 divided by life expectancy of 35 years, that's 23,000. So 23,000 divided by the original amount of their net worth. That's adding a 1% rate of return back to their portfolio, net of paying the taxes. They paid the taxes and they still gained 1% on total investment growth and tax savings year over year in their lifetime, which adds up to $817,000 in savings. And here is the breakdown. So instead of those years where we didn't have any taxes, we start shifting some money. We take money out of these IRAs and we shift them over. We withhold the taxes. Here's our tax rates. Okay, we're paying 10%, 10%, 10%. But then instead of being in that 25% tax bracket in retirement, we're in the 15. And instead of paying 15, 9, 14%, we're paying 4, 8, 9, 10. We cap out around the 11%. You know, you get to life expectancy, it's different, but we cap out, you know, and you're not getting into those 25%, you know, you're not getting into those super high tax rate environments. It's just a way that you can be proactive. So I'm speaking to somebody today who's 59 and a half to 73. Once again, you can be younger, you can't be older. So you're over 73, I'm sorry. There's other things we might be able to help you with, but not this specifically. But if you're 59 and a half to 73, and your advisor is not talking to you, or you're not personally doing this yourself, it needs to be done. It needs to be implemented. Because if you're working with somebody, you're probably paying 1%. Make them earn their money, right? Investment management, stuff like that's a commodity to some degree. At least that's my lens on it. Make them earn their money. And that leads to another point. That's something we can't stress test here because this is the demo client. These aren't real people. The third variable we run and we add into this is, what are the fees you're paying? Most people say I pay 1%. They don't realize is they're paying 1% to the advisor, they're paying, you know, 40% to the asset manager, and then there's other fees on top of that. So they're really paying 2%. Then they have an annuity that is charging them 3.5%. I'm not hating on fees on advisors because we have people pay us fees, and I'm not hating on annuities because annuities can be right for people. But what we find is, once again, success hides inefficiency. They bypass what they're paying for something versus what they're getting out of it because they like the guy. He's at their country club. They've known him since high school. It's family friend, whatever. They just let it blow over their head, or they've never just considered it. And so another thing we inspect is, how do we make it worth our while? Because this is a for-profit business, but how do we also help the client hit their goals? And is there a way to save money on fees? You know, and so that's another thing we add into that we can't demonstrate here today. So that'd be another thing we add into somebody's planning is, okay, we saved you 817,000 plus what we save you in fees. What does that come to from a rate of return perspective? And so that's another thing you should be evaluating is what do you pay? Because once again, the worst case scenario is you pay us the same amount of money you're paying somebody else, or you're not paying even at all, but yet you get an addition back to your wealth building that you wouldn't have got before. And that's just what we call and what we believe is going to work for the money we're making and adding value to people. I hope this has been helpful. I know it's long-winded, and I appreciate if you've hung around this long. But these are the intricacies that we go through. And so people don't just meet with us and get our half effort. We show up and we give you the best. If your current situation is the best situation, we're going to send you on your way and we hope you have a happy retirement. But if we think there's an opportunity, we're going to be professionally persistent because my experience is that people say, yeah, I've had my advisor talk to me about taxes. I think we're good there. And my next question is always, well, if you talked about it, why haven't you done it? And so that is the key variable, everybody, is has it been brought up? And if it's been brought up, why has it not been done yet? Or if you do it yourself and you've thought about it, do it. Don't not do it. Okay. And so that's just the thing I'm going to put on your brain. If there's just get it done. Don't put this off. This is extremely important. It can be saving you money. It's good for your family, and it's going to add peace of mind at the same time. So I hope this was valuable today, and we look forward to serving you and seeing the positive effects and the feedback you give us from some of the changes you make in your financial planning. Thanks.